Over a year ago, I casually shared an image for my ideal version of a remade roster for Super Smash Bros. A couple of people expressed interest in hearing my thought process behind it. I said I would share it eventually, and like the vast majority of my content ideas, it has sat on the back burner, untouched, since I came up with it. Sorry about that, but at least I'm here now. Before I begin though, I need to explain some things about what I want from Smash's future, as they provide important context for everything about this roster. First, as it stands, I am done with Smash Bros. In its current form. It was a lot of fun, I'll treasure the memories I've made with it, it's been a fantastic run, but I'm ready to see something new from this series. If the next Smash is just the same thing but with more characters again, I will be disappointed. Other platform fighters have started to test the boundaries of the tried and true formula here, and I'd like to see Smash follow suit. New mechanics, new ways to play, more complex characters, an overhaul from the ground up. The roster I have here is just 25 characters strong, but despite many familiar faces being present, I consider all of them to be newcomers. Because I'd want the in-game mechanics to change to a point that a one-to-one translation from old games wouldn't be feasible. The core gameplay has shifted too drastically. Second, I want the series to embrace a live service format, which I know rings alarm bells, but let me explain my reasoning. When it comes to Smash Bros., so much development time is wasted porting things over that already exist. Think about it. Every time, all the Kirby hats have to be redone. Gotta retexture Hyrule Temple again. Redesign the ray gun for the umpteenth time. It's why modes like target tests can't exist like they did at their peak, because every new game would have to make a new batch every single time for every single character. But imagine if that wasn't the case. If the franchise was designed to be updated rather than serialized. An expansion with 5 characters or so every year. All that would be required would be to make 5 target tests for those 5 characters. All development effort could go towards new content. And if it's just 5 characters, that's plenty of room for board the platforms as well. New modes could join the fray. A story mode would just need a new chapter involving new characters. New stages would never have resources drained by old ones. All effort could be devoted to making the series bigger. So while there are only 25 characters here, that number would increase regularly over the years, designed to do so with no end in sight. Partially related, third and final, I want custom moves to return and be drastically expanded upon. Smash 4 gave an effort, but that was never going to work. The roster was simply too big at that point. Too much would have been required for any real ambition with the mechanic. They also tried to customize every character equally, and only the specials, which was just a very odd choice. A character like Mario has near limitless potential for different moves he could use, for normals, specials, and super moves. But not so much. I would like that to be completely overhauled. So while this roster only has 25 characters on display, there's much more than 25 characters worth of content behind that number, in a variety of different ways. Someone like Samus would be what one would expect, able to change the properties of moves by equipping an ice missile instead of a regular one, or the wave beam instead of the charge beam. But for someone like Fox, who doesn't have as much to draw from, the customization would come in the form of having multiple characters to choose from, as that roster slot is not just Fox, it is Star Fox, with all 4 pilots being able to be chosen from, each with slightly different playstyles built off of the same base. Maybe Link could be a mix of both, being able to choose both which incarnation it is and the items he uses. How a character can be customized would now be on a case-by-case basis that allows them to meet their fullest potential. This is another reason I really want to have a live service approach. The level of customization ambition I just described probably wouldn't be possible at the launch of a game, but over time, more and more could be added to existing characters on top of new ones. Gone would be the days of arguing whether Mario needs the latest gimmick from his latest game. as now that could easily be added as new custom move options. Not only that, it could allow for old playstyles to be somewhat present. Classic moves like Mario's dunk and Donkey Kong's headbutt could still be implemented for those that can only survive on a diet of nostalgia. So, to recap, this roster is being made while keeping in mind that the gameplay is being overhauled, with live service updates and with absolutely crazy custom move options. Let us begin. With a rebooted Smash roster, I think there's 3 important things that are needed. There needs to be a good mix of playstyles, obviously. There needs to be a good mix of franchises appearing on the roster. And even when considering that everyone here is essentially a newcomer, there needs to be new faces added to the roster. Almost every Reboot roster I see consists only of series veterans, which is a huge mistake. A new game needs that hype of seeing someone audiences have never seen before in this format. So starting off, there's the blindingly obvious choices that any Nintendo crossover of any form would need. Mario gets top billing, of course, along with Donkey Kong, Link, Kirby, and just barely Samus. Obviously Pikachu is in that number as well, but Pikachu is a perfect example of how crazy custom moves could be. I would want Pikachu to be tied with Red. A Joker Arsene arrangement where Red stays right alongside Pikachu to help however he can. Pikachu taking care of the basic combat, but stronger moves having Red step in to send out a powerful Pokemon to help Pikachu out. For example, having both ride a Pidgeot or Charizard to fly up as a recovery, summoning a Blastoise to fire off a water cannon as a side special, that sort of thing. And there would be a lot of custom options for Pokemon that could be summoned. Maybe even have ways for Pikachu to team up with the Pokemon. For example, if a Super Meter was introduced, some meter could be spent for Pikachu to electrocute the water Blastoise sends out. A lot of options there, I'm sure you all get the idea. These 6 characters are what I'd argue are the required choices for a crossover, any crossover. Other series have multiple options to choose from, or are just not quite important enough to feel necessary. That said, this is Smash Brothers, and at this point both Fox and Captain Falcon are arguably mascots of Smash, more so than their actual games. Fox again joining the game under the banner of Star Fox, and I'd like Captain Falcon to do something similar, each with equally wacky personalities. I don't think Ness and Earthbound at large are at that same level. It wouldn't feel good, but a new game doesn't need him. A rebooted roster could exist without him, but the series brings a lot of unique charm tied to it, and at this point, it can count as the game's retro pick, so Ness barely gets to come back too. There are also a few franchises that I would argue must be on the roster. Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing, and at this point, Splatoon gets into the running as well. But choices for who would get the spot are a bit more flexible. I still think a basic Inkling works best here, it's easy to see how the customization comes into play. But with Animal Crossing, I'm actually going to go with Isabelle. I think an Isabelle moveset designed specifically for Isabelle, instead of just being easily copied off of a villager, would see the charm and character of Animal Crossing come to life far better than the emotionless axe murderer. As for Fire Emblem, we've got another Star Fox case. I want this to simply be the Lord class. Marth acting as the face with characters like Roy, Chrom, Lucina, Erica, etc., all presenting slightly different takes on this sword dancer duelist fighting style. Massively benefiting the game by shunting all the boring Fire Emblem characters into one slot, and probably financing the live service elements all on its own with costumes and new characters. Because if there's one thing we've learned in recent years, it's that Fire Emblem fans will buy anything. I mean, honestly, I would too. If a Myrmidon class was added with Joshua as an option, I would pay an embarrassing amount of money for that hat. That is 12 characters already from 12 franchises, but I don't think that's enough. I think it's healthier for a crossover, in terms of stages and item choices and all that jazz, to have a wide variety of different genres and faces here. But it's also important to explore some depth of the series at the same time. And thankfully, Mario has had so many spin-offs that it's easy to fulfill both wishes. Yoshi and Wario, while strangely feeling not that important. Despite being around this whole time, I feel like a Smash could exist without Yoshi pretty easily. They've still done more than enough to stand on their own 2 feet, plus they bring some different playstyles to the table, so both of them get in. And I would also argue that Luigi has hit the point where he can stand separate of Mario as the head of his own series, especially given how custom moves could still bring them closer together. And then there are still a few franchises that I feel pressured to include, but at this point none of them are important enough that Smash would feel incomplete without them. And I do want a bit more variety of playstyles that double dipping into franchises can do best. I'd want to get characters like Little Mac, Olimar, and Pit back via DLC as soon as possible, but the main roster doesn't need them. That said, I do want to add one more franchise to make it an even 16, and of all the ones missing, I think Xenoblade is next in the running, so Shulk comes back too. 16 characters, 16 franchises, I think that is enough. No third parties to be found here, as for a reboot, I'd only want to start including guest characters well after the new formula has found its footing. From here, it's a matter of finding characters to flesh out the roster, bring new faces to the fold, and make sure there's a playstyle for every preference. With that in mind, DK is the only heavyweight currently, and heavily skewed to be a grappler. And given how I believe villains are the best way to make a roster more interesting, the obvious choice is for Bowser to return as the de facto giant heavy hitter, as well as Ganondorf, who I am considering an actual newcomer to the series as he finally gets to be his own character. Given how Smash didn't include very many villains, this is the perfect opportunity to add some new ones. I would put Dark Matter here. I have an entire video explaining why I think that would be an amazing character that would really stand out on the roster, and I would also include Team Rocket. A Pokemon villain is arguably the biggest Nintendo thing missing from Smash Bros. Currently, and this team is the obvious choice. Yes, they are more anime characters than game characters, but they are still heavily tied to the games and the brand. Someday I plan on doing a full video about them too, but for now, as a quick elevator pitch concept, take Hero's gimmick of critical hits and reverse it. Also often considered a villain, but I'd argue he's just misunderstood, is our second Animal Crossing character, Tom Nook. Yes, I am passing over Villager entirely. Again, I feel the actual characters of this game represent its charm far better, and I think a perpetually tired businessman like Tom Nook would make for a hilarious character. But one shopkeeper just isn't enough, I think. And Fire Emblem could really use a character with an actual personality. So let's throw Anna in as well. This used to be Robin, but after seeing multiple phenomenal Anna movesets, I've been convinced that she's the superior choice. Hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have some YouTube shorts highlighting those viewer ideas, but if not, the links to them will be in the description. Roster's almost done, and there's not many smaller, speedier characters here, so Diddy and Dixie join the fray as a tag team duo. I've seen many claim that's a disservice to their individual characters, and respectfully, those people are wrong. Teamwork is the heart of most of their appearances. I would take Zelda to act as a more traditional, cerebral trapper kind of character, and for the last option, I was conflicted. Maybe bring Peach alongside Zelda, maybe grab Olimar or another newcomer, but eventually I settled on Mewtwo, as a sort of power fantasy kind of character. Something that is omnipresent, should win every fight, but can't be bothered to try unless it absolutely has to. I think that's one of the best themes to have in a fighting game. And of potential options, Mewtwo makes the most sense. And that's it. That's the roster. Same size as Melee's, but with significantly more depth. This is my ideal reboot roster for Super Smash Bros. A mix of new and old, keeping a wide variety of both franchises and playstyles that would be expanded upon over time as a live service model. Obviously, there are faces missing here. People would initially be upset to see some of their favorites passed over, but that initial disappointment would be easy to turn into further excitement as those characters start rejoining. This is, I feel, the best place to start, giving the most bang for its buck while keeping the roster small enough to ensure that the actual game mechanics can expand to their fullest potential. This video marks the arrival of a new artist to the channel. everyone please give a warm welcome to Carson. Look how good that thumbnail turned out. I've been meaning to bring on more people for a while now. I want to make smaller YouTube shorts to highlight cool peasants' perspective ideas, and Carson's help is going to make that much more feasible to do regularly. But there's another reason this is happening now, and if I might get serious for a moment, I'd like to talk about it briefly. My main artist, MadArts, is currently in a rough spot. Hospital bills and eviction notices galore. Because some humans just can't exist without trying to exploit a profit off of people's basic needs. He hasn't had time to work on commissions for me for a while, and I want to do what I can to help. But just sharing a donation link or something of that nature never feels good. So we decided to do something better, something cool for the community. I have financed a commission from MadArts for a community banner. And if people throw a donation to MadArts, big or small, something of your choice will be added to that banner. Just describe what you want in the "What is this payment for" section of PayPal, and it will be so. It can be an avatar, or a favorite character, or maybe just a toaster, I don't know, whatever makes you happy. All drawn in the same art style as my avatar alongside my avatar. Furthermore, on top of funding the initial commission, I will also be matching whatever the community can raise. I love working with MadArts. It's been one of my favorite things about content creation, and I'd like to continue doing so for as long as I'm making videos, and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is and incentivize this as much as possible to ensure that continues to happen. At the very least, send him some good vibes on Twitter. He could really use them. Links to both the PayPal and Twitter are in the description. Let's all give our boy a helping hand.